Welcome back everyone to another Kerbal Space Program video, and in today's Kerbal Space Program video I'm going to teach you how to land and return from Minmus. If you do not know, Minmus is one of Kerbin's moons. It's pretty cool, has lower gravity than the Mun, and it's like a mintiest green color, so it's pretty cool in terms of aesthetics. But I'm going to be continuing our MG Aerospace save file, which is where everything is going to happen on this channel. But anyway, here we are loading in to the KSC, and we're going to go into the vehicle assembly building, like always. But here we go. This is going to be the craft that we're constructing in today's build. So I'm going to show you how to build it right now. Alright, so the first thing we're going to need is the Mark III command pod right here. It seats 3 Kerbals. Then on top of that, we're going to need a parachute, so if you can just get the Mark 16 extra large parachute from utility and just drag it right on top. After that, we're going to need a heat shield underneath the lander, and we're going to need a decoupler, the TD25. Alright, now we're going to need a fuel tank, the Rockomax X216 fuel tank, and a Poodle engine. Make sure that you have it in the double bell format, not the single bell, because the landing legs won't be long enough to land there. But anyways, now we can go into ground and get the LT2 landing struts, and we're going to place that 4-way radially around the craft. You can just change your radial symmetry by pressing X to increase it, or by pressing Shift and X to decrease it, just like that. We're going to start with these retracted. And then right here on the front, what we're going to want is a Kerbal LV Bay Mobility Enhancer. And this is basically just an extending ladder. I'll show you 1 second. Just like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bind this to an action group 1. So if I click on it, if I click on the ladder, it'll highlight in blue, and I'll press toggle ladder. So now since we put it in 1, when I press number 1, it's going to toggle that ladder. Okay, now our lander's almost done. The last 2 things we need are some Z400 rechargeable batteries. Probably don't need that huge of a battery, but I think these look too small for this craft. So I'm just going to go with those and the 1x6 solar panels, the retractable ones. Make sure you get the retractable ones and not these, because these, once you extend them, you cannot retract them. Alright, so those are going to be placed in the 2-way symmetry. And we're going to actually bind these solar panels to action group 2. So now, same thing is going to happen. You want to click on these and press toggle solar panel. And now when we press 2 during the mission, those solar panels will extend. Alright, so just going to drag this up. And after that, we're going to need another TD25 decoupler and the Rockomax X232 fuel tank that's bigger than the one that we used previously, so make sure you don't get them confused. And we're going to get the skipper engine. I'm just going to change it to the bear because I think it looks better like that for the transfer stages. And then after that, I'm going to take the TD25 decoupler, and we're going to get another X232 fuel tank, and this time we're going to place a twin bore engine. On this channel, I haven't used a twin bore yet in any tutorials, and I didn't want to use the mainsail because we already used that in our Mun mission, so I wanted to kind of mix it up here. But, yep, that's going to be our main engine for our ascent stage. Alright, now go back into coupling and get 2 radial decouplers, just like that. I'm going to actually bring them up a little bit. And then go into engines and get the Thumper SRB. And just place them right on those radial decouplers, just like that. And I'm going to use the offset tool to move the decouplers up, or move the SRB down so the decouplers are towards the top of it. And then I'm going to just drag the whole decoupler assembly up more, and this will ensure that when our when our SRB detaches, it'll fall away from the craft and not hit it again. Alright, now we're just going to need some strut connectors, so I'm just going to put some like that, and then we need an aerodynamic nose cone. I'm going to get the advanced nose cone type B, because if we rotate it correctly by pressing E, it actually kind of looks pretty cool the way it angles into the craft, but that's just a preference. Alright, now we can just go into structural and get a launch stability enhancer thing. I don't know exactly what it's called. What is it called? Yeah, launch stability enhancer. We can place 2 on the twin bore and 2 on the SRBs, just like that. And then we want to make sure that our SRBs and our twin bore are in this stage, our radial decouplers after that, and we want to make sure that our skipper and that decoupler go at the same time, and our poodle and its decoupler below it go at the same time, and the parachute and the capsule decoupler go at the same time. Alright, now last thing you need to do is go into crew and make sure you have some crew. You want to make sure that you have at least 1 pilot. So if you don't, what you can do is you can just go into the astronaut complex and just get a pilot. So you can just find one. The courage or stupidity doesn't really matter, so I'm just gonna get Kellner Kerman, and we can just put him on the command pod along with Bill Kerman. Alright, so this is a very capable rocket here, so we can just go press the magical green button, which will allow us to land on other planets or moons or celestial bodies. Alright, so we're at the launch pad. Standard launch procedure. T to enable SAS. Z to max out your throttle. And since I have camera tools, I'm going to target the vessel. And we can launch. Boom. Alright. There goes the rocket. Alright, so now once we get to 100 meters per second, we're going to want to throttle down to 2/3 throttle, which is that first little line right there. And now we're at 100, now we're at 1 kilometer up, so we can start gradually tapping D to start our gravity turn. Just making sure that our roll angle is correct, because if our roll angle is not correct, we're gonna D is not gonna work effectively. Alright, now we can just detach the SRBs. Alright, and once we detach the SRBs, we can full throttle again. And keep proceeding with our gravity turn. Alright, so we can just keep this angle for now until we detach the twin bore stage, and then our skipper engine is going to kick in and help us the rest of the way into orbit. And I have the Kerbal Engineer Redux mod up here to help me with the Apple Apps site, but if you don't, you can just go to the map screen and check from there. But yeah, we did detach the twin bore stage, and we're just going to keep going like this. Yep, just waiting for our Apple Apps to get to 80 kilometers up, and then we can cut the throttle. There we go. So now the next thing we need to do is get us into orbit. So I'm going to click on the Apple Apps and press Add Maneuver and drag out Prograde. And then once we see our periapsis appear, we can right-click on it to check the numbers constantly. And then we can just keep dragging it out until that gets to 80 kilometers. And we are pretty circular with a difference of like 300 meters, not even. Alright, now we can just click on our maneuver thing on the SAS. I don't know what you would call that exactly, but it's that thing there. And now, once you're here, we can start preparing for our burn. So, what we're going to want to do is check our burn time. So right now, it's at 30 seconds. And we want to start burning when the node in T- is half that time. So in this case, it would be 15 seconds. So when this value gets to node in T- 15 seconds, that's when we're going to want to start our burn. So we're burning on both sides of our Apple Apps in this case. Okay, so I'm just going to hit time warp, which did nothing for us. But one thing you should also be aware of is now you can see our burn time is now 27 seconds. The reason for that is it calculates if you haven't left the atmosphere yet when you're creating a burn, it's going to calculate that you're still in the atmosphere. So you want to make sure that you've left the atmosphere before you do your final check on that burn time. So this really only happens if you're leaving a planet with an atmosphere and you're planning the maneuver while you're still in it, or that's really the only time. But now our burn time is 27 seconds, so we're going to start our burn at 13 seconds, 13.5 to be exact, but we can just go with 13. And I'm just going to time warp a little bit more. Alright, there we go. That'll give us a good amount of time to prepare. And now we can start the burn and go back into the map screen. I like to get into the overhead view of a planet or moon when you're doing this, just so we can see our line extending more easily. Anyway, it's easier for me to see it. Alright, just waiting and taking its time to get into orbit, but we're almost there. Alright, periapsis. And gonna just press shift to do some gradual adjustments, and now we're in orbit around Kerbin. So usually what you would do from here is you would just plan a maneuver just to go straight towards the Mun. But we're going to Minmus, which is much farther away from Kerbin than the Mun, as you can see here. And if you look from the side view, you can actually see that it's on a pretty steep incline relative to Kerbin's equator. So we're going to need to adjust our plane. So how you can do that is click on Minmus, left click, and press set as target. And now we get these AN and DN markers. And what we want to do is find the one that we're closest to. In this case, we're closest to the DN, which is the descending node. This is ascending node, this is descending node. And we're just going to place a maneuver, and we're going to want to drag on the normal and anti-normal markers so that our orbit, its angle changes like this, so that way we can get the most efficient burn towards Minmus. Alright, so now, oops, that's not the right one. I'm going to restart it. Alright, so now we're just going to drag on the normal or anti-normal marker, and if this number is getting greater, that means that you're dragging on the wrong one, so just drag on the correct one, and we're aiming to get that number at 0.0. Almost there. Alright, so I got it to 0.0 pretty easily, but if you're dragging it and it's not getting to 0.0, you might want to slide the maneuver node around the orbit a little bit, but be careful because too much could make it incorrect. But we're here now, and we can just point towards the maneuver point on the SAS. And since we've actually left the atmosphere, I'm going to extend our solar panels just like that. Perfect. Alright, so now burn time is 6 seconds, so we just need to start our burn when this is node in T minus 3 seconds. So I'm just going to time warp. There's the Mun. Now we're going on to the dark side of Kerbin. Alright, so just gonna do a little more time warping until we get to about node in T minus 20 seconds or 10 seconds. Alright, there we are. So we can get ready to proceed with the burn, and what I like to do is I like to go into the map screen and watch it closely, like from this angle, and then we can start the burn right now, and then watch the blue line match up with the orange line. You might want to quick save before you do this. I probably should have mentioned that earlier, but you might, if you've never done this before, you might want to quick save before you do it, because it took me, when I first started the game, it took me a little bit of time to get like the maneuver node maker, like just to get all the processes on it exactly right. It took me a while to learn, and if you're having trouble as well, I would just recommend getting into orbit and just messing around with it, seeing what each node does yourself, because sometimes in Kerbal Space Program it's better to learn things yourself, because everyone has their own different thought process on doing things. But anyway, I digress. Alright, so the next thing we need to do, find Minmus when it's aligned with Kerbin, just like that. Then find about 90 degrees, which is about over there, and add a maneuver node right there, and drag out prograde. So we can just keep dragging prograde, and we see that we actually didn't get an encounter because I dragged it too far. That's hilarious, but not really. Anyway, so we can see these intersect markers, and we're just gonna keep dragging our prograde until they get close enough that we get an encounter. And we can see that our Minmus periapsis is like 2 million meters. That's a lot, but we're trying to aim for like 20 kilometers, and I would say the least I would go is like 10 kilometers. So I'm gonna just keep dragging that prograde, and I'm gonna right click on it so I can always see the numbers. And to do fine adjustments, you can just use the scroll wheel, but go slowly, go on each increment of the scroll wheel. And okay, 21 kilometers, that's pretty perfect. And I'm just gonna click on Minmus and focus my view so I can zoom in and see if this is equatorial, which it is not. But we can fix that later. Oh, we can actually see our Minmus roving base. I might be able to land us near there. I don't know. But let's see if we can't adjust the equatorialness of our orbit. Alright, it seems like we can't, so we'll have to do that later on our interplanetary? No. I don't even know what you would call that between a planet and its moon. I'm pretty sure it's called interplanetary space, but I'm not positive. Anyway, same thing as always, point towards the maneuver node, calculate the burn time. Right now it says 42 seconds, so we're going to burn at 21 seconds, and we can just time warp to the maneuver. It's a good time to mention, if you guys are enjoying the videos that I'm making, or if you enjoy this video, I would really appreciate it if you guys hit the like button, and if you're enjoying everything I'm making so far, hit the subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. And yeah, so that was pretty perfect timing because the time warp just stopped. But anyway, we can now get ready to burn. So I'm just gonna time warp. Just like that, and we're gonna get to 21 seconds and we can commence the burn. And you can see this white line here means that we're gonna have to do a stage separation. So now I just started the burn, but this stage is gonna run out of fuel mid-maneuver. That's fine, because we just need to press spacebar again, and we're gonna start burning that poodle engine. I made a bad mistake there. I just started burning with the poodle. I pressed spacebar by accident. Don't do that, it's pretty bad. But I think we'll be fine. Mistakes happen. I make mistakes. I probably should have quick saved. If you're new to Kerbal, quick save before you do anything important, because you can just try it 1,000 times. You can actually try it an infinite amount of times, but that's not really the point. Alright, now I'm just gonna press shift to do a gradual, to do really fine-tuning maneuvers, and we can see our periapsis is there, and it's coming up fast. So what I'm gonna do, since it's coming very fast even though I'm only pressing shift, is I'm gonna bring our thrust limiter down to like 1. That way our maximum throttle is going to be 1% of our full throttle now. So now when I press shift, it's coming in much slower. Alright, so there is our orbit. I got it a bit low, but that's fine. And I'm gonna make sure that I bring that thrust limiter up. If you're doing the same thing, bring it back up right away before you forget. And now is the time where we can adjust our plane. So what we want to do is go find on the orbit and click on it and add a nope, not warp here, add a maneuver. And what you want to do, just like when we were adjusting the plane before, drag on the normal and anti-normal. So so you can bring that periapsis up, and then we can get into an equatorial orbit. If you land all of your craft on an equatorial orbit, that ensures that if you ever need to land with that craft again, you can just get into an equatorial orbit, and it's just gonna make life much more easy. Alright, so now we just need to check our periapsis because it does get lower, and we just need to drag prograde very gently. So I have it marked on there so I don't lose it. Oops, okay. So we're just gonna bring it down again. Alright, so 20 kilometers, that's good. So now our burn time is 0.1 seconds. That's very fast. There's no way anyone could ever do that. So we're gonna bring our thrust limiter down again. I'm gonna bring it to 0.5 and see what that does. That's the lowest you can bring it. That's a 2-second burn time. That's perfect. So we just need to start burning when it's T-minus 1 second. So it's going to time warp towards the maneuver, and there we can see Mun and Kerbin leaving us, or rather us leaving them. Yeah, now we are in interplanetary space, I believe. Oh, that's a pretty cool shot right there, actually. You can see Kerbin and the Mun. Just gonna screenshot that. But I'm gonna do a little time warping here, watching that node in T minus till we get to like 10 seconds. Alright, we're at 10 seconds. 8, 7, 5, 4, and getting ready to burn now. There we go. That's almost exactly what we had. And now we can just plan to deorbit ourselves. So what you can do, just place a maneuver at the periapsis and drag retrograde, which is like the circle with the 3 lines and the X through the middle, and drag it until we get circular, which is about 20 kilometers on each side. And you can see that we're actually getting pretty close to the Minmus rowing base over there. And see, this is what I was talking about before. So when I brought that thrust limiter down, I did not bring it back yet, and it says that our burn time is 33 minutes. So if you're doing this, if you're doing any mission and you forget about your thrust limiter and your burn time is such a huge number like that, you might want to check it, because that's almost always the case. And see, now it brought it down to 10 seconds. That's much quicker. Coming down to Minmus. 11 days, but we have time warp, so not too bad. Always, like, whenever I'm coming into a planet, I always like to try and spot it before we get too close to see, you know, just for fun. Alright, come on, where is it? Oh, there's Minmus, coming close. We can see the beautiful terrain coming in the distance, and as we swoop down. There is truly nothing like Minmus in the Kerbin system. It's just like, it's so great for beginners because the gravity is so low, so it's super easy to land on. And if you ask me, I love the way it looks. I think it's probably one of the best looking planets, and I don't even have any visual mods installed. So yeah, it's really cool. But I digress. So we're just gonna time warp until we say node in T minus 10 seconds, so we can start burning at 5. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, and I can start the burn. And like I said, whenever I'm getting into orbit, whether it be slowing down or speeding up, I always like to get the overhead view just because it helps me see a little bit better. There we go. Our apoapsis is coming down. And there we go. We're in orbit around Minmus. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a maneuver here. And see, I'm not going to spend too much time on this since you guys probably don't have a Minmus roving base in the exact same spot as me. But if you're trying to land in a specific spot, you're going to, let's say, because I want to land with the Minmus roving base, I have to account for the time that it takes me to get here, and then the planet is going to rotate, and then by the time I descend, the planet is also going to rotate even more. So you kind of, it's kind of, at this point, unless you're like genius, like rocket scientist, there's no way this is not a perfect science anymore. This just kind of becomes a little bit like a guess and check kind of deal. But anyway, it's a 1 second burn time. This doesn't need to be perfect unless you're trying to land with something, which we are not. I am, but we're really not trying to. All right. And one thing I did not mention about Minmus, it also has these really huge flat patches of land. Like, if I go into the map screen, like, you can see this huge piece of flat land. I don't think there's anything like that in any other planet in the Kerbal system. In the Kerbin system, yeah. But, yeah, that's another thing about Minmus. So now I'm just going to do the burn. Alright, like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. And now we're not going to use any maneuver nodes to land, just like the MUN mission tutorial. So, we're going to point retrograde on the nav ball using this little, like, stability thing over here. We're going to point retrograde, and we're just going to slowly descend and slowly have our like slowly put like shift or like do throttle, slowly use the throttle to gradually slow us down. That's what I was trying to say. So, you know, words, sometimes I'm not very good at them, but we can continue now. So just time warping. When I land on Minmus, I always like to aim to land in the flats, and doesn't necessarily look like I'm gonna make it here. But that's okay. I'm afraid I'm gonna hit a mountain or something. But at this point in the mission, I'm not really gonna worry about that too much. I'm just gonna deploy the landing gear and press Action Group 2 to deploy the solar panels because, you know, in case we tip, I don't want to destroy our solar panels. But yeah, so we can keep time warping, and we might actually get into the flat area. But we're going 153 meters per second. If we were on the Mun, I'd be freaking out right now because we only have a poodle. But this is the great thing about Minmus. If you're a beginner, you can just do full throttle, even with a poodle, and look, we're already down to 100 meters per second. It's not efficient to do a full throttle burn, but I was just demonstrating there. Alright, so here we can just, I'm just going to press shift, and just going to watch our speed slowly come down. And when we're landing, especially on Minmus, because if we come down too fast, the gravity is so low, and we have a bit of dampening on these landing legs that it'll just act like a spring and we'll just bounce. So we want to be like, I would say, aim for under 10 meters per second maximum. I always like to aim for as least speed as possible when I'm landing, but it doesn't need to be perfect. But the slower the better. Alright, so we're coming in a bit faster. We're coming in a bit closer, and we're still going a bit fast, so I'm going to keep throttling up. Alright, so we're at 30 meters per second. That's pretty good, considering how fast we can slow down. And we're coming in close. We're like 70 meters. Alright, so we're like at 4 meters per second. And now I'm just using Shift and X to cut the throttle when I need to. And just gonna increase the throttle. Wow, okay, that was a pretty good landing. That was like 0.1 meters per second of speed. But yeah, that was good. So we can extend this ladder. If you forget to bind it to an action group, that's fine. You can just right click on it and press extend ladder, but we bound it to an action group, so I'm just going to press 1. And yeah. Alright, so I'm gonna just do that. And then we can take Kellner, no. How do you say his name? Kerbal Space. Gonna take Kerbal Space out on an EVA. And you don't need ladders on Minmus because they can, like, I'm pretty sure they could just jump the whole length of the craft. We'll test that when they're getting back on. But yeah, and then walking is another huge annoying thing because they're pretty much jumping when they walk. But I'm gonna go on EVA here, as you can see I'm doing, and going to plant a flag, or plant the MG Aerospace flag. There it is in all its glory. Don't really understand how it was moving there because there's no wind, but yeah, so we'll title this Minmus Lander Landing Site. Yeah. Okay. So we can just set them up like that and then switch back to the vessel. Oops, by pressing these like bracket keys. And now we can take Bill Kerman on EVA. Climbing down the ladder. And I'm just going to get them both on EVA. You don't have to get them on EVA unless you want to plant a flag. And at that point, you don't even have to take 2 out on EVA. But I want to do it just to get a screenshot, you know, because thumbnail. So this is, chances are, this is going to be the thumbnail image. But yeah, maybe even something like this. Alright, so let's get these guys back on board. And so you could use the RCS, you could use the ladder, or you could just jump because of Minmus. The Kerbals jump even higher than this craft right here. but I'm going to use the RCS to control them a little more. You can use shift and control. Shift is to go up, control is to go down. W, A, S, and D, pretty normal, just like using the Kerbals on EVA. And then you can use E and S to make them roll, just like that. And F is to grab. And then we can just board. Alright, so now we can just get Kerbal Kerbin on board. I think it's always much more fun to use the RCS pack to board them onto the vessel. Oops, I accidentally extended those solar panels right there. Just let me retract them. Alright, so one thing that you want to make sure is if you take all your Kerbals out of the craft, the SAS is going to disengage automatically. So you're going to want to re-engage it. Make sure that it's re-engaged. And then as soon as we take off, we're going to want to pitch forward that way because we have such low gravity. And look, the reaction wheels are actually tipping the craft without any thrust. But that's besides the point. So I'm going to do full throttle and tip the craft forward, track the landing gear, and going to watch the apoapsis rise. So we're going to want to get to like 20 kilometers, and it rises super fast on Minmus, so you want to make sure that you're watching that on the map screen. Yeah, see, it already rose super high. So we can just add a maneuver and drag this out. We don't need to get it as high. I'm just going to go bring it to like 20. And we only have a 1 second burn time. That's fine because it's just getting into orbit. You can always use shift and control to help yourself go like a little bit more fine-tuning with the throttle. And you can see here that we can't actually time warp because we're below a certain altitude, so the game won't actually let you time warp until you're above a certain altitude, depending on which planet you're on. But we can use this time to deploy the solar panels, just like that. Yeah, it's still not letting me time warp. A bit annoying. See what the Kerbals are seeing. See, there's room for 3 on this vessel, and you can actually just get inside the craft. Anyone can do that. You can just press C. And another thing that you can do that's kind of cool is if you go right down to these little portraits here, see this little circle right where my cursor's on, and you click on it, it'll actually open up like certain parts of the craft, and so you can see inside. It's actually kind of funny. You can see that there's an electric charge on this craft and some RC and monopropellant, so that's already stored inside of the inside the command pod, and that's pretty cool for Squad to do something like that. But anyway, now we're above the altitude that we need to be the time warp, so I'm just going to time warp to the maneuver by pressing those little green fast forward buttons. And now we're there, so just time warp more, and so we can see, and on Minmus it's kind of hard to see the numbers because it's so green and the numbers are green, so you can just angle it so that the numbers are like in outer space, but it's not that big of a detail. But now I'm just going to go into the map screen because we're going to get ready to burn. 3, 2, 1, burn, and stop the burn. There we go. Alright, we're almost done. All we need to do now is get back to Kerbin. So, just find Kerbin right there, make a maneuver, straight in line with it, and drag out prograde until you see a purple line appear, just like that. And this is basically, now we're in Kerbin's sphere of influence, so we're just going to want to lower our orbits and stuff. So all you need to do is get into an orbit like this, and then I'll show you guys what to do once you get into that orbit. Standard, everything. I feel like a broken record when I say this. Point towards the maneuver, cut your burn time in half, in this case it's 1 second, time warp to the maneuver node. We have to actually time warp a lot, I don't know why. But, yeah. And then time warp even more if you want to, or if you want to wait a minute, that's fine. Alright, 14 seconds until burn time, so just gonna wait for that to occur, and we can just go into the map view. 3, 2, 1, start the burn, and we got into our burn, into our orbit around Kerbin very easily. So now the next thing we want to do is we want to bring our periapsis down into the atmosphere. So, in order to do that, the best way to increase or decrease your periapsis is to burn at apoapsis in the correct direction, and the same works at periapsis. So what we're going to do, we're going to go to apoapsis, click here and add a maneuver, and then we're going to drag retrograde, and I'm going to right click on that periapsis right there. I'm going to click on it and watch it decrease. And we're going to want to, I like to aim for 50 kilometers because Kerbin's atmosphere ends at 70 kilometers and space starts at 70 kilometers. That's about the Kármán line in Kerbal Space Program for Kerbin. Alright, so we're getting near there. Oh, I went a bit past. I don't like to get too deep in the atmosphere because then you're going super fast and you are, then you could be a victim to super hot reentry heating. Alright, I'm just doing some fine tuning because of my perfectionism, my inner perfectionist is coming out. Alright, that's fine, that's good enough. Alright, so now it's a 7-second burn, not too bad. So you can just point towards the maneuver and time warp. Alright, so now you can see the line turned blue because now we were in that orbit. So now we're just time warping towards there. I'm actually going to just do a little bit of manual time warping. And there we go. And actually at this point you can see we're still focused in on Minmus, but it's better for focused in on Kerbin. So the way you do that, just take your cursor over Kerbin and just double tap, or double click, double left click. Alright, keep time warping towards the maneuver node. And we're almost there. It's kind of cool. I find it kind of awesome that, like, where's Kerbin? Like, Kerbin looks so tiny now because we're pretty much in Minmus's orbit. We're actually higher than Minmus at this point in our orbit from Kerbin, which is kind of awesome. But anyway, we can now just time warp a little bit more into 3.5 seconds. Would be exact, but I'm just gonna do it around that time. 5, 4, 3. Watching our periapsis come down. Watching these lines to match up. Alright, there we go. And our periapsis is at 70 kilometers, so I'm just going to right click and do a little burn with the shift key to get it lower. Okay, so now we just are pointing retrograde. Now this is the easy part. So what I'm going to do at this point is just going to retract these solar panels. Because, I mean, anything that's below the capsule and anything that's below the capsule and the parachute is going to get destroyed on reentry, whether it crashes into the ground or explodes due to reentry heating. But, I just like to retract them anyway. Alright, so now we can click near the periapsis and, click warp here. And this is just going to automatically time warp us, into the atmosphere. And we can see that the closer it starts getting to the periapsis, the faster it's moving, because the apoapsis is the slowest point in your orbit and the periapsis is the fastest point in your orbit. It's pretty cool to think about. I mean, not really helpful, but it's pretty cool to think about. Alright. So, we're going to change this altimeter to sea level, and then once we get to now we're at 70 kilometers, and we're gonna hear the outer space music stop because we're in the atmosphere. And now we'll probably slow down if we do enough passes in our orbit. We'll probably slow down just with the aerodynamic resistance. You can actually see that our apoapsis is getting lower, but we can just burn to make that process go much quicker. And yeah, why not just finish off all of the fuel. Oh, and there we go. There's already some things happening. You know what? I'm just gonna extend everything that we have. Why not? Create a little bit more drag. Alright, we have about 300 meters per second of delta V left in this stage. So we're just going to wait for that to run out, and then we will detach it. Alright, that stage is done, so now we can just press spacebar, and that will decouple that. And since we put the parachute in the same one, it's gonna arm the parachute. So when it's time, the parachute's just gonna deploy on its own. And there goes that lander stage. Oops, let's hope we don't hit it. Just angling us a little bit so the air helps us not hit it. And you can see that this craft right here, this back part, actually had more drag because we passed it, so that means we were going faster, which means that we weren't slowing down as much. But don't worry, this will slow down plenty. Alright, so I'm just gonna do some physical time warp here and time warp us down so we don't have to wait through this whole process. Alright, and we're actually, this is pretty cool. We're gonna land in the ocean. In real life, you would obviously aim to land in the ocean because it's a softer impact. But in Kerbal Space Program, you can pretty much just land anywhere you want. Alright, at this point, we can just right-click on our heat shield and press Jettison Heat Shield. And that'll just detach it, so it'll, you know, fall away from the craft. So, I don't know why. I don't know why you would ever want to jettison it, just in case you needed it again. But at this point, we're never gonna need it, so we can just detach. And once we slow down, the heat shield is gonna keep going and gonna crash down harmlessly. And you know what? Why not make this boring process a little more exciting? If you go down to your little portrait over here and click Go EVA, you can. I'm actually gonna. You know what? Let me remove the helmet and remove the neck ring. And deploy the chute. So, if you did not know, Kerbals actually have their own individual parachutes, and now when I let go, it'll deploy, and we can kind of, you know, fly around with Bill. Look how happy he is. That's actually kind of funny. Yeah, it's pretty fun. Make sure that you don't just, like, nosedive straight into the ground or the water. There's the shadow from the parachute of the ship. Alright, let me just land him right here, and then we will get Kendler Kerman. At this point the video's over. You guys don't need to go EVA with your Kerbals like this, but I don't know, I just thought I'd make it a little more fun. But yeah, that's everything. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you liked the video, like I already said, I'd really appreciate it if you gave us a like, or gave me a like, and if you're enjoying everything that I've been doing, hit that subscribe button because it really means a lot for the channel, and it'll help me grow into a bigger channel. Oh gosh, let me just get him on board. But yeah, that's the entire video. If you guys enjoyed, you know, come back for next week's video. Not exactly sure what we're gonna do, but I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.